So this is 2 Corinthians chapter 2, the scripture for March 27th. The ones that we love, I think, can sometimes hurt us the most. Maybe you've experienced that, where there's a person who knows exactly what to say to get under your defenses, and that person happens to be the one who knows you best and who loves you most. I think about my daughter when she gets shots at the doctor. Maybe that's not as big of a deal as the sort of emotional pain that two grown-ups can inflict on each other, but what comes to mind most immediately for me is when my 2-year-old has to get shots. You see, one of us, myself or my spouse, has to hold her down while the nurse comes in or the doctor comes in and pokes her with a syringe. And she doesn't understand why anybody would want to poke her with a syringe. And she's confused and terrified. Daddy, why aren't you letting me up? And suddenly she's got this pain and doesn't know what's happening. I think that after this, it's hard to receive comfort from the person who allowed such pain to be perpetuated upon you. And so oftentimes when Daddy holds her down, Mommy's the one who has to comfort her and offer her some comfort. What she doesn't know, what my daughter doesn't know, is that the pain that we feel on account of her own pain is immense. We hate it when she's in pain. We allow the doctor to give her a shot, not because we want to see her in pain, but because we know that the alternative is worse. I think this is a simplistic way of thinking about what Paul's saying at the beginning of this chapter, but it's along the same trajectory, even if it doesn't quite have the same depth. Paul wants to help the community self-regulate, but that would mean burning bridges and hurting folks and enmeshing himself within the community to the point where if he were to leave again, the community would have to start from square one. In the same way, I wish that I didn't have to expose my daughter to pain. I wish that I could smooth every path in front of her for her entire life so that she wouldn't have to experience the rough ups and downs that life has to throw at her. But that's going to stunt her growth. And what would she do if I couldn't be there to smooth out the path for her? Ultimately, whether we're preparing children, whether we're preparing successors if we're in a business, or apprentices if we're in a trade, whether we've got a protege that we want to see succeed, or a young person that we're mentoring, or maybe there's a community that we're trying to prepare to survive and to thrive on its own, no matter what, they'll inevitably need to learn how to survive without us. And while it's heady, it's addicting to be needed by a person or by a community, the most loving thing we can do is make ourselves replaceable parts within our community and help our communities and other people to know how to survive without us stationed at the front lines. And that's what Paul does here for the Corinthians. Instead of coming back and enmeshing himself within the community, he allows for the community to truly self-regulate and to figure out how to navigate a middle way without him having to do it. And because of this, Paul offers forgiveness to anybody in the community that the community itself has forgiven. Don't miss this. Paul is offering the community his own pastoral and apostolic authority here. He's saying that I, Paul, don't need to go and review all the things that you've done as a community, but I trust you as a community to have self-regulated and to have forgiven those who need forgiveness. He's empowering the community to make its own decisions and to look out for its own survival. I think this is what it means to bear the aroma of Christ, to have a faith that isn't dependent upon our own leaders, to have a faith that's not dependent upon how we're feeling on a given day, but to be sold out for Jesus entirely and with the entirety of our own beings, regardless of what the day brings. Being the aroma of Christ isn't always fun. As Paul says, for some it's the aroma of death. Some people are going to reject you out of hand because of who you represent and because of what you're about. Others are going to confront you, and you're going to need to learn how to embrace that confrontation at times. But you won't need to play games, and you won't need to pretend to be someone you're not. You can be the same person in every situation, knowing that the person who you are is the person that God has created you to be. And that's what happens when a community is empowered by its leaders. I wonder, how would your community react if they ended up needing to lead themselves today? That's all for 2 Corinthians chapter 2. On Monday, the 30th of March, we'll take a look at 2 Corinthians chapter 3. May God bless you in your reading of Scripture.